Okay, so 9 says, a severe blow to the head can cause one to lose consciousness. From this, some people infer that consciousness is a product of the brain and cannot survive bodily death. Do you know what the word infer means on the LSAT?
Like assume or conclude.
Conclude, not assume. It's conclude. It's way stronger than what I've ever thought before I took this test.
Got
Like,
it.
I thought infer was just an educated guess. Like, oh, I'm inferring this, I'm guessing this.
Mhm.
But really, it means to conclude. So
Got
just
it.
always replace it in your head. So from this, some people conclude that consciousness is a product of the brain and cannot survive bodily death. But a radio that becomes damaged may suddenly cease to broadcast a program it had been receiving, and we do not conclude from this that the program itself has ceased to exist. Similarly, more substantial evidence would be needed to conclude that consciousness does not survive bodily death. All right, so after we read a stimulus, we want to ask ourselves, is this an argument or a set of facts? And
It's an argument.
yep, and then what would be our conclusion?
Hmm. I think it's the last sentence.
Yeah, similarly, more substantial evidence would be needed to conclude that consciousness does not survive bodily death.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then we read our question stem, and it says, which one of the following most accurately describes the role played in the argument by the example of the damaged radio? So we want to go up and find the example of the damaged radio.
Mm-hmm. So where it says but a radio become
Yes.
image. Got it.
And then what we do is we want to make a prediction here and ask ourselves, what role or what is this sentence doing in relationship to our conclusion? Like how does the author use this sentence in relation to the conclusion?
It feels like in a way the radio analogy is a way to like weaken the
Weaken our conclusion?
no, like weaken the sentence before it.
Yeah. So we're using an analogy to, so why are we using the analogy?
To better prove the conclusion that more evidence is needed.
Yes, and we use an analogy kind of to like, and then as you said, to weaken this above. Excellent. So go ahead and read these answer choices. So start with A, and I want you to tell me like it, leave it, or hate it. So like it, you can say like it or love it, like means like you think it's the answer, but we'll keep going. Leave it means you don't you don't really like it, but you're not confident to cross it off. And then hate it is we're gonna cross it off.
Okay, got it. So it is cited as evidence that consciousness does in fact survive bodily death. We don't know that's true, so I would get rid of it.
So it is referring to our sentence, right?
Uh-huh.
And is it evidence that consciousness does not, in fact? No. So you're absolutely right. Okay, what about B?
So it is cited as a counterexample to a widely accepted belief about the nature of consciousness. The widely accepted belief, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, why?
Because it's not really mentioned in the premise beforehand.
Is it a widely accepted belief? Is it a widely accepted belief, or how many people believe this nature of consciousness?
We don't know.
Well, I think it was showing here.
Oh, some people.
What does some mean on the LSAT?
Oh, at
least one.
One, yeah.
Yeah, is at least one a widely accepted belief?
No, that's like far-fetched.
Excellent. All right, what about C?
It is cited as a case analogous to loss of consciousness in which people do not draw the same sort of conclusion that some people draw about consciousness. So we know it's an analogy and they use the word analogous. So I would keep it.
Okay, keep it. Moving on.
It is cited as a primary piece of evidence for the conclusion that the relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous to that of a radio program to the radio that receives it. I would keep it. And then if I don't like E, then I'll go between C and D and see which one
I don't
like. Okay, it is cited as an example of a case in which something consisting purely of energy depends on the existence of something material to provide. No, I don't like this one.
Something consisting purely of energy depends on the existence of something material to provide evidence of its existence.
I don't necessarily think it's an example of a case. That's why.
Okay, an analogy could probably be worded as an example, but an example of a case.
Yeah.
Is this a case which something consisting purely of energy depends on the existence of something material to provide evidence of its existence? What are we trying to provide evidence of its existence for? Yeah, that's not it. All right, so now we're between C and D.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my conclusion is more substantial evidence will be needed to conclude that consciousness does not survive bodily death. And the radio is used as an analogy to support that, but a radio that becomes damaged may suddenly cease to broadcast the program it had been receiving. Okay. I'm gonna look at C again. It is cited as a case analogous to loss of consciousness, in which people do not draw the same sort of conclusion that some people draw about consciousness. I'm getting tripped up on the wording of
These are
this
that's what
answer
makes these
choice.
questions so hard. So let's, when this
Yeah.
happens, and continue to work on really going slow and digesting them. So here we're saying it is cited as a case analogous to loss of consciousness. Is this part true? Is it cited as a case analogous to the loss of consciousness?
Severe blow to the head. So it says in the premise that a severe blow can cause loss, cause someone to lose consciousness. But our conclusion is talking about consciousness does not survive bodily death.
Yeah, no, I would say it is cited as a case analogous to the loss of consciousness. Like we're saying the radio being damaged is an analogous to like losing consciousness, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
That's what we're that's like why the radio works, right? It's like the radio
Mhm.
becoming damaged or us becoming damaged,
Yeah,
in which people do not draw the same sort of conclusion that some people draw about consciousness. So are we saying that, hey, and this is an example of something that people don't draw the same conclusion for as this other example up here?
we would, right? Because they're different from each other.
Okay, sorry, let's take a step back. So our conclusion is that the severe blow to the head is a product, or some people infer that consciousness is a product of the brain and cannot survive bodily death. Like
Mhm.
we're saying, like there needs to be more evidence for that, right?
Yeah, I got that.
And we get to this conclusion by using this radio example, right?
Mhm.
And we say, hey, in a radio, this is what happens, and you don't draw that conclusion. So why
So,
would
so why are you doing it with a person?
yes. So
Got
what C is saying is it is cited as a case analogous to loss of consciousness in which people do not draw the same sort of conclusion
Yeah,
some people draw about consciousness, right? We're saying like, hey, and we're using an example where our conclusion is different than what you think it is up here.
yeah.
All right, so let's look at D though. Sometimes we can get to our answer choices just by knowing why the other ones are wrong though. So
Mhm.
it says it is cited as the primary. So once again, I'm cautious. I'm like
Yeah,
primary.
yeah.
As the primary piece of evidence for the conclusion that the relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous or similar, right?
Mhm.
That or the same to that of a radio program to the radio that receives it. Is this our conclusion?
The relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous to that of a radio program to the radio that receives it.
What is our conclusion?
That more substantial evidence would be needed.
Yeah, so is this our conclusion?
Oh my God, yeah.
No, no, no,
Right?
no,
Now?
no. Our conclusion is that we need to have more evidence, right?
Oh, okay. Primary piece of evidence.
Our conclusion is
Yeah.
not that the relationship of consciousness to the brain is analogous to that of the radio program on the radio that receives it. Like, that's not our conclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this
I
just cannot be right either.
yeah, I get it now. Okay. The words were just really tripping me up.
Oh no, you're allowed. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
Really weird at first. Like,